Hey everybody, hanging out with Dan Halsey, international permaculture designer. I happened to meet him quite a while ago in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and we're looking over a design that I'm working on right now. So you can just kind of hang out, follow along. Dan's going to do a little bit of a critique on the design.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for 45 minutes, I suppose, now going over the work that Pete has done. And this is pencil. And pencil is great. And what's immediately, as we're looking at this, we're talking about patterns to detail. And as I'm looking at somebody's designs, and I was just looking at other people's designs last week, it's fun to see the different styles, but people are also using similar techniques and similar strategies. And one is get the pattern down, get the access routes down, what's existing, what can be, and even on the design here with Pete, there are some things that are on here that are actually already gone, or being diminished at this point. So through discussions with the clients, and we're always trying to show them these are what the options are, and sometimes they stay and sometimes they don't. But immediately what you can even see here, I think, is that we have a nice pattern going through here. There's actually very nice curvilinear patterns in here, which actually start to divide up the property into the production zones. So that's why we do access first. That's the first thing on my list in design is let's get our access routes first, because you got to be able to get there. Otherwise, what's the point? And you don't want to use up a lot of energy getting somewhere, or it's not going to happen, especially with our clients. But right off the bat, you can see in this design, there's some nice paths going through. The scale of here, what was that, 1 to?
It's 1 inch equals 10 feet.
1 to 10, yeah. Okay. And so we have some nice paths on here. Of course, as we go from the pencil sketch here, this on vellum, or this is on the tracing paper, all of these things get more refined as we go forward. We got black locust back here, or black walnut, excuse me, in the back. So that's issues talking about those trees. Is it really an allelopathic issue? Is it really a problem to work with different plants? Well, we've just been going through some of the woodland plants that I have in the plant database, and what Pete is familiar with, and is already from his list of plants also. What are the plants that can fit back here as we kind of connect all these trees in groups, kind of bundle these into planting beds, and then what can go underneath these canopies in these different groups. Right now the area is being mowed, and it's very nice, very conventional landscape, but the owners are really interested in having more production and also more natural landscape that way. So access is very good on here, and immediately as you see that, you start to see these little patches of production, all these areas. Smaller house on here with intended expansion on there, a nice garage, a detached garage, sheds in the back. And what we were talking about now also is the complexity of what's going on in the front as opposed to the back. Lots of production out here, but we were just discussing is, okay, if you have all that production, you have all this activity, what other things, what other features are we going to have to consider? Storage for one, right? Tools. How are the owners actually going to get around on this to do this production with basically not ruining their knees, their backs, and their wrists in the process? So what were your thoughts about about how could they manage this space with the storage that they have?
Yeah. So as far as this goes, part of it is wanting to focus on perennial systems. And keep the circulation really easy through here. But as far as the storage goes, one of the big aspects of that is storing materials on site behind the garage. As far as the equipment needed to maintain this, it's fairly simple overall. But one of the big considerations is just the amount of maintenance. For example, having this large area, which is all currently lawn except for a vegetable garden, there's considerations of the tools needed, which are all the way back here.
Yeah. Which
Dan pointed out, even though the client may think that, it's not a big deal to have to go back here, it gets in the way of, a more productive time gardening, or, this is the approach to the house. The street is out here. So you're coming in, you get home from, these people are retired, so not necessarily coming home from work, but they get home, they see the garden, you want to be able to get right in there and pull a few weeds, or,
right.
pick things, stuff like that. So initially I had this area, kind of like a shaded area where you can hang out, which would be a good spot to maybe have like even a small lean-to against the garden fence for some tools, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another thing when working with various clients, they have their own ideas.
Yeah.
And so she said she wanted to do like soil mixing
Mm-hmm.
right in the driveway right there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sound that out to me, someone next door, they can hear you, but these aren't soundproof, so I don't know that you can be softer. I just
Okay.
heard the last second, you
Okay.
sound that loud to me, but just be aware of that, just in case you can be loud.
We can be quieter.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, we're in a library. Have to be quiet.
You permaculture people, you're so noisy.
So we just get excited. So that's another aspect is like
Mm-hmm.
really knowing if the person's actually okay in the long run with using this as a mixing station, or if they actually would enjoy that more. But then that's, this kind of storage aspect of keeping all these materials over here, but wanting to mix the soil here doesn't necessarily make,
Right.
it depends where all the materials are coming from.
So what we're working with then is relative location.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, right back to Mollison, everything needs to be relative in a location to everything else. How it's being used, frequency of use, the ease of use. So obviously if the garden is here and the garden has needs, right? Those needs should be met as close as possible. So the tools for the garden, the water for the garden, all those kinds of things, the closer it is to the garden space, probably better. Once we get back into the field here, because here's the house, you have basically this line running through here. This is where like the perennial production is, the tree production is, all those areas are back here. And then we have our conventional production basically in this whole corner. So whereas this is more passive and less trips, kind of we're back to our zone 4 area of production. This is still zone 1. And we're in kind of bringing, having a shed, I think it exists back here is great, I think, for the perennial area. But there is this garage here, and maybe instead of having like on the south side here, there could be a lean-to. It is where they're parking their cars. It is a detached garage, so it's not the first place we want to start filling up with all those garden materials, wheelbarrows, shovels, all those things which add up very quickly. Baskets, tanks, sprayers, all those things that perhaps out here somewhere needs to be an attachment or an area on the garage on the south side to store those things, hooks or whatever. Now, this is Minnesota. So I have been places where things are you just hang them outside underneath a roof line or something like that. Not so good here because it's really hard on the wood. It's hard on the tools, all those things. So they really need to be somewhere protected. If the vegetable garden, which is fairly sizable, or this whole area is used, you just imagine there's a fair amount of equipment and there's a fair amount of harvesting. And how Pete was talking about maintenance. This is one of my things, is kind of a mindset is in permaculture in general, I try to convince people anyway, there is no maintenance, there's only harvesting, right? If we can have that attitude. It's like every time we're going to do anything, I'm harvesting. If I'm pruning, if I'm cleaning, if whatever I'm doing, I'm always harvesting organic material. The only thing that needs maintenance is the machine, is the technology. That's the stuff you have to maintain or it's just gonna die or turn into trash. So everything else is when we're harvesting. So when we're harvesting, plants here, or we're harvesting in the fall, organic material, we're taking back to the compost pile, wherever that is, that's going to involve some kind of mechanism in order for that to work. The forks, the spade forks, the pitchforks, different kinds of shovels for all those purposes, all that needs a place to be, especially in the wintertime when everything's in bed. Somewhere in the summertime it's easy to get at. So you could have, out here by the garden, hooks, places to put all that stuff. But generally speaking, you still need to have a fairly decent storage area to put all these elements, the tools and things, as you're working forward every season in that sense. The other thing we were talking about too, maybe we could talk about the hoop house options on here too. By the way, the road is out here, and this is the driveway coming right through. So the aspect to the house, everybody is seeing the house from the south, and this is the north. So everything is really facing to the south and facing to the neighbors. So we have aesthetics to consider also.
And I can post a picture of this like head on for you guys. in the group later. But so I had this area, this is in between the veggie garden and the street, that was reserved for a possible hoop house. But not necessarily knowing how these people are really going to want to treat their property as they get older. They're already 65. They're probably going to be in the house for another 10 years or so, or at least that's kind of the time frame of how long we can expect them to be really active in their landscape. And so the idea of maybe we don't know exactly what this area is going to be used for in the long run, but we can use various plants, say, like cut flowers or a nursery area for young plants. That's a flexible flexible cover type or use of that space that can be transformed into a hoop house cover eventually. So we're not planting trees or things that are more of a legacy planting on the landscape, and we have more flexibility.
It's almost like it's a long-term. If there's the veggie garden here, and in front of this might or might not be a hoop house, if we wanted to prepare that area for some kind of production for the first few years, we just fill it with perennial plants. Make the planting bed. We're